Today's Patreon shout out comes to you with thanks for Kerry Driver. Omo, Queen of Vesuva, versus Jinnie Fay, Morska, and Cleopatra. Dirty, dirty Assassin's Creed commander. Yeah, that's a total lack of ramp, which seems to be quite commonplace on Magic Online. Rarely keep the opening hand. That's slightly worse, if anything. So we'll try going down a card. And alright, that's half decent, but we're going to need to get into some good top decks, a bit more mana off the top. And we'll have to lose out on the Evilmold Hydra, I think. So we're going to need some luck on our side here. Let's see what we draw into on the first turn. Kindred Discovery. Excellent card, if we can cast it. Just lands from our opponents as well. And a Scion of Draco. We've got one more shot to get into a land by turn 3. Nature's Law from Cleopatra. That's what we need. Junction Dissident. Whenever an artifact enters under your control, put a plus counter on a creature. 3 visits from Jinnie Fay. And here's our last chance to get into that third land. Yep, so we're doing nothing. Fastwood Surge, Cleopatra, surging ahead on mana. Mask of Memory, jumping into the Junction Distant, putting the first plus counter on there. And equipped up will be draw 2 and discard. And swings in to the left. Yeah, Cleopatra, whenever a legendary creature with counters on it dies, you draw. So it's not just the creatures that you control, it's your opponent's commanders as well, which, yeah, that's going to go pretty well for him with Morska. And commanders do die when they go back to the command zone now as well. Erasta, going to make some spiders over the course of the game. Alright, there's the land, of course. It's a tap land, because it would be. We'll get something going eventually. Gala Greeters for the Golgari player. Followed by Henny, Undying Partisan, a 2-2 with haste. And can be used as a sack outlet. Obviously gets plus counters as well, which is why it's in there. Maze of Ith in play as well, so going to be more difficult to swing in over there. And now the 2-2 swings in at us so that he can get the card draw. Didn't see what he discarded previously. Just got rid of a forest. And discarding a basic again. First commander into play is Morska, Undersea Sleuth. Another commander, 2 in a row. Jinnie Fay, Jetmir's second. Alright, getting a couple of lands in a row kind of makes up for the losses here. So drop the Tropical Island, and if we get our commander into play, we can start adding more mana with Cloud Post, assuming that we keep our commander in play, which is always a big if. Let's go for the Omo, and then select a basic land and our commander to get everything counters, so every creature type, every land type, which means that the Cloud Post is now going to tap for 2 mana, I think, yeah. And the Scion of Draco, now that we've got every land type, or every basic land type, is only going to cost 2 mana, gets a discount, and there's 5 basic land types, so that obviously leaves us with 2 mana. And thanks to us being in Simic, it's hexproof and trample onto our creatures, so that protects our commander hopefully. Cleopatra, we got 4 commanders in a row, so we'll assume that no one has a board wipe in hand. And plus counters on here, that is currently a 3-3 and swings in down the middle. Cleopatra triggers at the end of the turn, and as you would expect, a plus counter on each of the legendaries. And he can sacrifice this whenever he wants in order to draw cards. Morska investigates, making a clue token at the beginning of the upkeep. And that will put a plus counter on something with the Junction Dissident. Oh, Cleopatra's other legendary, so it can't put a plus counter on itself, just putting 1 onto the Henny. Sol Ring for Terrax, and it's another plus counter onto this thing. Then a Tireless Tracker, 6 cards in hand, even though he's getting a load of stuff done here. Manages to shock in a land, making a clue token again, and once again that will trigger the Celestia creature. Plus counter goes on to the Tireless Tracker this time. He's keeping them off his commander, likely because of the Cleopatra. And the 4-4 turns in towards us. They might be able to make, I really don't want to lose Omo here, so they might be able to make an artifact at instant speed. We'll just let them through. Losing Omo is the one thing that's going to break this deck. So they'll get to draw 2 and discard 1 again. And drawing his second card for the turn puts 2 plus counters on the Morska. Discarded Toothy, Imaginary Friend. And there we see Lonis, Cryptozoologist. So whenever another non-token creature enters under your control, investigate. parallel lives to double up the tokens, so going to get twice as many spiders, or dogs, or cats, whatever he decides on. I always tended towards the dogs personally because I like the extra power, and the 1 toughness means that you can throw Skull Clamp on there. Alright, and Urza's Power Plant, so we've drawn 3 lands in a row is good. So drop Urza's Power Plant, and this means we've got 6 mana available, but we don't have any good attacks with Omo, which is annoying. So maybe we just have to go for the Kindred Discovery and start swinging in with the dragon. We can name dragon with it, I suppose. It's not the best, but I think that's all we're really going to be able to do here. Can't cheat anything in with the Cryptic Gateway yet. Been too slow here, really. So ideally we'd name Merfolk or something like that, but yeah, we're just in a tricky spot here where we have to just swing in with the Scion, so has to be dragon, annoyingly. Maybe we can get into something relevant, because our draws have been a bit awkward so far. So 4/4 flyer into the left, just double check that there's no reach or anything. Draw with the Kindred Discovery. Okay, takes us into a Lightning Greaves. If we hadn't had to waste that floating mana, we could have played that this turn. We've got Hexproof on the Omo anyhow, so Maze of Ith just going to untap that, that's fine, we just did it for the card draw anyway. So with Lightning Greaves, maybe we could go for the Seagate Lawmaster and draw a couple of cards, because we'll have control of a couple of allies with that in play. We're treading water, but this is often the case with Omo. We're playing the long game with her. Vorinclex, Monstrous Raider, is going to keep the plus counters from going on anything over here, but it will double up the plus counters everywhere else, and it is another legend, as you would expect. So now this has jumped up to a 5/5, and the Vorinclex has haste, so that turns in on its side alone towards the right. Could gang up on Vorinclex here and only lose 1 creature. Decides to take the damage, and then it was 2 plus counters onto the Vorinclex. Yeah, I think they could have put one onto the Henny there as well, but didn't for whatever reason. Anyway, Morska investigates at the upkeep, so I'm losing track of all these plus counters here. Beast Within goes on to the Vorinclex. Oh, of course, there was no plus counter occurred there thanks to the Vorinclex, so he needs to get rid of that straight away. Makes the first token with the Arrester, or 2 tokens thanks to the Parallel Lives, and he does indeed go for Scooby-Doo. A creature entered with the Beast Within, and drawing some cards with the Cleopatra, drew 2 due to the couple of plus counters on the Vorinclex, and another plus counter goes on here thanks to the Beast token entering. Tireless Tracker investigates when a land enters and triggers this, targeting itself. And 5/5 again swings in towards us. So Mask of Memory, draw 2, discard again, and it will be a couple of plus counters on the Morska thanks to drawing the second card of the turn. Discards a Gold Rush to the equipment, and then a Weirding Wood enchants a land, and when it enters you investigate, so another clue token. Enchanted land taps for 2 mana of any 1 colour, and the Dissident targets the Tireless Tracker for another plus counter. There's a Gavany Township in play here, not sure if that just entered this turn. And now all the attacks going down the middle against the Bant player. So attempting to get rid of some creatures with 4 toughness with a Gavany Township by the looks of it. More likely to get damage through here, I think. Blocks the Arrester with the Commander. So Gavany Township not going to have this thing survive. Just lands 6 points of Commander damage. Your Henny will see that die and get a plus counter. And then a White Sun's Twilight. You gain X life, create X might tokens, and if X is 5 or more, destroy all of the creatures. I mean, we needed someone to buy some time, but it does feel bad losing out on our commander, although we couldn't swing in with it anyway. I think the worst thing about this commander is that you lose the ability on the lands when it exits, so the Cloud Post isn't going to see a bunch of other locusts, and the Urza's Power Plant isn't going to see a bunch of other Urza lands. But anyway, Blacksmith's Skill is going to try to protect the Morska, and Infernal Grasp goes onto the Morska in response to that, so we're seeing our opponents use up their cards, each with 3 in hand. There's an Arcane Denial, so there's a nice stack for you. Countering the Infernal Grasp, it'd be intriguing if could just counter the White Sun's Twilight with that, I suppose. Decides to instead counter the Infernal Grasp, so board gets wiped, he keeps his commander. So our commander goes back into the command zone. There were 10 dogs created there. So at 10, 3/1 Vigilance Dogs. And Cleopatra goes on the stack a bunch as well, so 3 cards in hand at the moment. We'll see how many cards he ends up with after the turn's over. Could have kept this as an indestructible, couldn't he? Yeah, sacrifice another creature, it gains indestructible. And this is destroy, not exile, so yeah, your Henny staying in play would have been a real boon for him there, because this is a very, very good creature. Anyway, managing to get rid of it. And the Kindred Discovery, thanks to trying to draw that 1 card previously, is nowhere near as good as it would have been. Would have been good to name Merfolk or Shapeshifter even, something like that. It'll just be triggering on attacks now. Cleopatra ending the turn with 9 cards in hand and 28 life. During our upkeep, Arcane Denial draws Cleopatra a couple of cards, 1 card for Morska. Alright, we could have done with that a turn before now, but island over here, so that could be of some use to us. Our commander's 5 mana. So do we just play it now and try and make ourselves a bunch of mana for next turn? I think that's the only thing we can do here really. We could otherwise just set up a Displacer Kitten. Yeah, I don't think we're doing too much of anything, so go for our commander. And now the Tropical Island can be all lands, Omo can be all creatures. And that means we should have access to 8 mana next turn, unless we can make a land, we'll have even more. Sarith, the Viper's Fang. Death Touch when it's tapped, Hexproof when it's untapped. And a Cultivate for some more mana. Investigating during the upkeep again. Equipping the commander with the Mask of Memory again. And again, swinging in at us. So we go down to 23, draw 2, discard 1. 2 more plus counters onto the commander as well. Discarded a basic. Playing and equipping a Tarion Soul Cleaver as well. So plenty of plus counters to be had with that, and vigilance. And now it's through to this player who, yeah, needs to throw in a load of dogs into the red zone. Looks like it's all going in down the middle. So 30 damage from the dogs swinging in. That is a Rampage of the Clans. Destroy all artifacts and enchantments. For each permanent destroyed this way, its controller gets a centaur. Well, we've got 1 more creature that we can make an everything creature with Omo at least, but did little to nothing for once with that Kindred Discovery. So all the artifacts and enchantments go down. The Tarion Soul Cleaver still triggers on the Morska. So this is going to be a big threat with regards to commander damage. So now it's a case of centaurs trading with dogs. 3 toughness to 3 power. So not blocking with all the centaurs, letting 6 damage through here by the looks of it and keeping hold of a couple. Gavany Township triggers anyway, might as well get a couple of points of damage if that was always his plan. But this will not have his dogs survive. So Terrax still goes down to 21, but there are some bodies left in play at least. Alright, see if we can actually do anything this turn. That is a Deep Root Pilgrimage. Whenever 1 or more non-token merfolk you control become tapped, put a merfolk into play. Obviously our commander is a merfolk at the moment. So we've got 5 colourless mana at the moment. Could have 6 if we swing in first, because we'll get another Locus. So that'll leave us with 9. So that means that we could go for Seagate Lawmaster, a Lightning Greaves, and a Deep Root Pilgrimage. Might be okay. So let's go Lightning Greaves first. And Tarax is holding up priority, so we'll see if he does anything to our commander. The Golgari player is holding up priority as well. Decides to allow it. So now we can go for the enchantment in Deep Root Pilgrimage. And we would have liked to have been doing things like this way before turn 8. But didn't have the best of opening hands, unfortunately. But if we get to see a little bit from Omo, it's still been a fun game. So now go through to attacks. And this is just an attack trigger. Although I didn't account for the fact that we can't get through, did I? I meant to play the Master of the Pearl Trident, unfortunately. Oh well, whatever. We'll just swing down the middle. And they'll probably double block with the Centaur. So put an everything counter on the Shockland, 1 onto the Centaur, and the Deep Root Pilgrimage is going to make us a token as well. Yep, so deciding to double block and take out our commander. Don't think we're going to be doing much of anything now. Return it to the command zone, we'll keep playing it out anyway. Yeah, what I should have done there, for some reason I just didn't account for the Centaur. What I should have done there was gone for the Master of the Pearl Trident so that we could have got through. We could have done that instead of the Deep Root Pilgrimage, I think. Yeah, we could have done. Oh well, we'll just equip up the Centaur. Cleopatra back into play. And Aurum Reef will be activated for a plus counter onto the commander. Plus counter onto Sarith at the end of the turn. And once again, an Investigate from Morska. Thieving Skydiver, where X is 2, so after our Lightning Greaves. So throwing the Lightning Greaves onto the Morska. And this time the commander swings into the right, blocked by a Centaur. Noteworthy he threw away the higher toughness Centaur as opposed to the dog, so maybe he's got some dog tribal stuff in the deck. Clue token gets cracked. A Scoot Swarm enters for the token player. Straight into landfall. So a copy of the Scoot Swarm after that, 2 cards left in hand. And following that up with a True Conviction, so double strike and lifelink on his creatures. And carrying on focusing on the Bamp player. Couple of 4/2 double strikers, making him use up his spot removal here. Goes after a dog token to gain him 4 life. And that means that he'll be able to double block with the Centaur if he wants to. Does decide to double block, so trades a dog for a Centaur. Alright, so let's see if we can... Nature's Law on turn 9. Got there eventually. So we have to go for the Nature's Law here. That'll leave us with 1, 2, 3, 4 mana. So then it'll just have to be the Master of the Pearl Trident, unfortunately. And maybe we can cheat in the Seagate Lawmaster with the Cryptic Gateway. Although, how good's that going to be without our Lightning Greaves now? Whatever. So we'll make this a Hedge Maze. And we can Surveil with that. And there's another land on top. So we'll keep that Master of the Pearl Trident. It should have already been in play, because we could this turn have maybe played that Cryptic Gateway into the Seagate Lawmaster. That would have made our next turn a lot better. Anyway, I'll try to help get rid of the Bamp player who's been going after us all game. Hopefully show my other opponents who we're aiming at as well. So thanks to my blunder, we have to play our commander next turn. And I don't think we're going to be doing much of anything else outside of that. Rishkar's Expertise going to draw 4 cards, I think. Yeah, draws 4 cards and gets a free spell. And the free spell is a Creeping Renaissance, so chooses a permanent type and they all come from graveyard back to hand. So I didn't get a chance to see there. Returned Yahenni, Gala-Greeters, Vorinclex, so named creatures. Replaying the Vorinclex, it does have haste and hexproof, now that the Sarith has swung in down the right. And yeah, distributing the plus counters better this time, so it was 2 onto Sarith and 2 onto Vorinclex. Vorinclex doubles up the counters, don't forget. That is Rosy Cotton of South Lane. Create a food token when it enters, and a plus counter on a creature when you create a token. So the counter goes onto the Thieving Skydiver, or at least it would if Vorinclex wasn't in play. Cracking a clue token to put the plus counters on Morska. So should have been 2, but only putting the 1 on here because Vorinclex halves them. And deciding not to swing in at all. Could have risked turning in over here. The Maze of Ith couldn't have targeted the Morska. And there's no Death Touch to worry about anymore, but I mean, if he gets a bunch more plus counters, maybe he gets him on the swing back. Jinnie Fay back into play, 2 cards and 4 mana. And able to make tokens in the form of Smothering Tithe, so won't get more mana from this, but will likely make a lot more dogs. So we're all kind of sat at a stalemate here. Noteworthy that Cleopatra does have a full grip of 7 though. So we know what we're drawing into. It is the island. Smothering Tithe we will have to say no to. So the treasure is turned into a dog by the commander. 3/1 double strike, lifelink vigilance. And let's recast our Omo. And Omo, it can go after a basic and a Merfolk token with hexproof, I think. Although we want our commander to be every creature type. Can make itself every creature type in attacks, I suppose. Yeah, we'll point it at the Omo. And then we'll continue to hold back as well, seeing as how everyone else is doing that. Might be that this Vorinclex comes crashing in towards us next turn. Oh, and of course the new counters don't come on thanks to Vorinclex, but we've still got the Cloud Post and the Urza's Power Plant switched on. So hopefully we'll have 11 mana next turn with Omo. There's Yorvo, Lord of Garenbrig, enters with 8 plus counters instead of 4, followed by the Gala-Greeters back into play. So that means 2 more plus counters go on Yorvo because a creature just entered, and Yahenni back into play again. And does Aurum Reef just care about green creatures? Yes, it does. So Gala-Greeters gets a couple of plus counters from Yahenni entering. activates Aurum Reef for 2+ counters on Gala Greeters and Yorvo. So this is now a 12/12. And going to the right is scared of the Scoot Swarm most likely. So that's an 8/8 trample, a 6/6 with Death Touch. They'll both have Death Touch now thanks to them being tapped. Did decide to pay into the Smothering Tithe by the looks of it, by the way. Okay, might be forgetting about the trample on Vorinclex, just deciding to chump it with a dog. You might as well take it if you're only going to throw one toughness in the way. Alright, blocking with the dog and Jinnie Fay for double strike damage onto Vorinclex, which many of us want to see the back of, and just throwing one single Scoot Swarm away underneath the Satya, is it called? Sarith. Alright, so Vorinclex dies, and a few other creatures do as well, including the Jinnie Fay goes back into the command zone. So Henny going to trigger 3 times, Cleopatra is going to draw some cards and lose some life as well. So we're drawing cards, Smothering Tithe now goes back to making treasure, but decides to pay for the treasure, doesn't have anything else he wants to do this turn apparently. And holds back a Maze of Ith, 5/5, 12/12, 3/5 commander, and a 5/5, all with hexproof. Plus counter goes on to Henny, and he's putting one onto the Rosie. So I'm guessing he's trying to garner a favour from this player now. Investigating with Morska again. Maybe he's worried about the ability to give this unblockable. Unblockable and then Shroud would make it so that he could one-shot this guy. Anyway, created a token and distributed a plus counter. And looks as though Terrax is paying into Smothering Tithe as well. Another clue token being cracked. So draws a second card, triggers Smothering Tithe again, and it is finally over 21 points of damage that this thing will deal. Throwing out a Wojek Innovator. That now has Shroud and Haste on it. And the 2/4 Flying Vigilance Shroud Haste goes into the right. So everyone's pointing nukes at each other at the moment. And we'll assume that Morska doesn't have a means of getting through with unblockable. Only a matter of time though. Lightning Greaves back onto the commander. Alright, this smells like a board wipe. A 1/1 double strike lifelink goes into the left. Blocking with Gala Greeters. Henny gets a plus counter when the Scoot Swarm dies. And yep, there it is. All creatures. Yeah, it's just all creatures. So I don't feel too bad about balking up my turn previously because I don't think we were ever going to do anything with our commander anyway. Might be a counter spell in Terrax's hand. Henny going to gain indestructible this time. So this thing is going to be massive and we have to be careful of the swing back on it. So once again, commander back into the command zone. And Cleopatra going to draw some cards and lose 2 life for each trigger. So 5 triggers equals 10 life, goes down to 16. But Henny is going to be huge. So I'm really hoping that the game doesn't crash here. Because there's a Smothering Tithe trigger on the stack for every card that was drawn, and there's still Cleopatras. I'm not sure how many cards he's actually going to draw here. He's got 41 left, and like I said, some Cleopatra triggers on the stack still. So I'm going to have to... A lot of people complain about me using up a lot of my clock, but it's for things like this a lot of the time. If you get a lot of triggers on the stack on Magic Online, it can crash the client, so you have to pass through them manually in order to help the chance along that that doesn't happen. And of course, in doing it manually, instead of auto-yielding, it takes quite a bit of your time up and swallows up quite a few minutes here and there. Alright, so 42 cards in hand and 25 in the library. Doesn't have a means of unlimited hand size though. Only 1 card in hand for Jinnie Fay. We're still during the second main phase, so he could get his commander out here. Probably a good idea with Smothering Tithe in play. Does replay the commander. And the last card in hand was a Birds of Paradise, so deciding not to bluff on that, just throws it out. Alright, a land for us, that is Lazotep Quarry. Now we've got 2, 4, 6, 7 and 8 mana. So, yeah, we could play out the Robe of the Archmagi. I'm just kind of editing the deck as I go on Moxfield while I'm waiting for my opponents to do stuff, and really not liking this. I've swapped it out for a Mithril Coat. Probably best to put a Hammer of Nazan in the deck as well so that we can liberally swing in with our commander. Anyway, say no. So that means our opponent is going to make a dog token. We'll go for Seagate Lawmaster. That will make us a Merfolk token. And if we get into a land again next turn, maybe we can go for our commander yet again. Not that that'll do much for us when we're tapping out into it. So that enters, we'll go for the Robe of the Archmagi as well. Probably not going to make use of it, because if we tap this thing down it'll be to draw a card. So we've got a 15/15 Jinnie to worry about here. 43 cards in his hand, so I don't know, is it likely that he'll be able to make a bunch of tokens and buff this up enough? In Garruk's Wake, another board wipe. In Garruk's Wake destroys all creatures your opponents controls, so yeah, feel even less bad for not doing too well this game. So could now one-shot Terrax out of the game with Jinnie. 2020 goes in at Jinnie Fay. Terrax could have survived off the food token anyway, and he decided to use Okina to give it a +1 buff. Polukranos Unchained enters with 6 counters on it. That could easily escape from the graveyard as well. Eventually manages to discard down to 7 hands, discards a whole bunch of cards here, and not sure if he has a means of reanimating all this or not. Morska back into play again, continuing to make use of our Lightning Greaves. At least us not scooping is allowing the Lightning Greaves to stay in play. Merchant of Truth, whenever a non-token creature you control dies, investigate. And clues have Exalted, I've never seen this one before, that's interesting. Jinnie Fay back into play once again alongside another mana dork, Sylvan Caryatid this time. Activating Gavany Township, he has every chance of getting some more dogs into play, so he might have wanted to wait on that. But it's turn 11 and maybe he just wants to pass through the turn cycle really quickly. Alright, another land for us, so I think we get to replay our commander here. So play Yavimaya and replay our commander again. Count it on a basic and on Omo. Bane of Progress, another board wipe. So that has 27 plus counters thanks to all the treasure that just went down. And both of the creatures go into the right, so it's a 20/20 and that does not have trample surprisingly, so a 6/6. Just chump blocks as you would expect. Roots of Life after the attack. Choose island or swamp. When a land of the chosen type enters, you gain 1 life. Obviously choosing island with this board state. A Cabal Coffers has hit play here as well. Only 5 swamps at the moment though. Oh, 6 with the shock over there. Beginning of Morska's turn again. Cracks the clue token, but didn't draw into anything apparently, so just deciding to pass the turn. Nothing for Jinnie Fay either, other than a manland. Doubt we're going to be doing anything either. I think I've only played this deck once and it went okay, so I haven't really seen any of the flaws of the deck. And I'm thinking that the whole flicker sub-theme isn't really worth having. Maybe we should just focus on indestructible, multiple attacks, things like that. Maybe even extra turns, dare I say, as much as that upsets people. So we'll go for Displace a Kitten here, we'll just do whatever. Oh, it's not when it enters, it's when it becomes tapped, so gaining a life with the Roots of Life. That's a hell of a lot better, actually. Assuming that you go up against the right decks. So Displace a Kitten into play. Yeah, we don't have any good attacks here because this can become a 5-power creature with the Gavany Township. So we'll take advantage of the flicker things that we've got. We'll name Cat with the Distant Melody first of all, because the Displace a Kitten is a May ability, so maybe we'll be able to do something with the cards that we draw into. So we'll play Distant Melody, going to name Cat here. Displace a Kitten will flicker and bring back in the Omo before the Distant Melody is done resolving. Point our commander at Hedge Maze and the Displace a Kitten. Suppose we could have gone for a copy of the... could have gone for a copy of Master of the Pearl Trident with this. Maybe we can do that next turn. I'm just trying to actually do something this game at the moment. Right, so upon resolution, I've actually pointed the counter at the Displace a Kitten, so we'll name Shapeshifter, because our commander without a counter is a Shapeshifter. That draws us 2 cards, a Timber Protector. Means we can go 3 visits, will give us 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 mana, so yeah, we'll do that. Plenty of islands to tap here thanks to our dual lands into the Roots of Life. And we're going to make more islands the more we flicker our commander, so flicker it again with the Displace a Kitten, and it will put a counter on itself this time. That way it will be a Tree Folk, and Timber Protector is going to give it indestructible. Alright, and that player decided to scoop it up now that he's sort of been dealt with. I mean, he hasn't been dealt with any better than the rest of us have. So now Displacer Kitten and the Commander have gained Indestructible thanks to them being Tree Folk. Hopefully make it easier for us to block some big smashy creatures. Some counters have been removed from this, so it must have fought another creature at some point. I did walk away from the computer at one point because I needed to go to the bathroom. This has been quite a long game. Turn 13 now. There's the Herb Org as well, so making a load of mana with Cabal Coffers, 5 cards in hand. Elemental Bond he'll have to be careful with. 22 cards left in his deck. Casting a Vigor into that so it cantrips. Then Roaring Earth triggers on landfall for plus counters. Noteworthy that the Vigor has Trample, so if they end up with a bunch of plus counters on here, then that's going to be a big threat. Down to 2 cards in hand, a Feign, and that cantrips as well. You can sacrifice a creature, remove a counter from a creature to make a treasure, sack an artifact to make an Inkling, 3 visits. Land enters and triggers a Roaring Earth, so a plus counter goes onto the Pelucranos. Tyrite Sanctum turn the Feign into a god, likely in an attempt to make it indestructible at some point. The Aurum Reef, the Vastwood, only puts a plus counter on the Vigor, and then it's a couple of attacks into the right. 29-29, a 4-4, and we get a 22-22. So Terrax with his 3 cards in hand doing something in response. And is that an overloaded Cyclonic Rift? How many board wipes is that? This is why I personally, it won't feel too bad to you because you're watching an edited version, but this is why I only tend to run 2, maybe 3 board wipes in a deck as opposed to the advised 5 or 6 that some people talk about. It's because it just makes games last a hell of a lot longer, and I'd rather lose a game and have it be shorter and more succinct than win a game and have it drag on until turn 20. Everyone has their preferences, of course, so if winning is the absolute most important thing to you, then you would put more board wipes in your deck. And then Pelucranos was going for a fight onto this. This is indestructible, so that's not going to pan out too well for him. Ends the turn with Roaring Earth in play. Yahenni has haste, so we can get that down next turn easily enough. Clue token gets cracked again by Morska. Rishkar's Expertise draws 6 cards for the Bant player and gets a free Halcyon Emerald Archdruid. Pay 1 until end of turn, target token you control becomes a green bear. And it's a 4-4, so 8 cards in hand. And throws out a Gala Greeters of his own. Little bit of a mirror match this one. As we assume the 8 damage is coming in towards us. And I think the 6 commander damage here, yep, it's from Morska, so have to be wary of that. Okay, a Sink into Stupor. Can't remember, return a spell or non-land permanent an opponent controls to its owner's hand, so yeah, that could be useful because Terrax is likely going to keep swinging in at us. We definitely need to get Omo back down. That means that the Cloud Post now taps for 8 mana, so we'll have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 mana left over, 3 of which is for the Sink into Stupor and probably best holding up a Ghostly Flicker as well. And all that can make use of Displacer Kittens, so yeah, make use of the Cloud Post mana. Oh, actually I miscalculated there because of the Cloud Post mana making so much, so we're either holding up Sink to Stupor or the Ghostly Flicker, but we can flicker something with Displacer Kitten anyway, so I don't think it matters. We will pass at that, I think. Not much point in getting down the Cryptic Gateway. As interesting a card as I think Cryptic Gateway is, if everything went swimmingly for us then it would be cool to make use of it, but I think too many things need to be going in the right direction for us to make use of it, and it's way too easy to disrupt the whole everything counters thing on creatures apparently, so yeah, that might have to be another one that leaves the deck. Yahenni, Undying Partisan back into play, followed by the Roots of Life again. See what he names this time, Swamp or... no, he's gone for Island again. Like I said, every land in play is a swamp and a forest at the moment, so you'd name one of those two really. Feign the Broker back into play. Quest for Renewal is a means of untapping all your stuff. It needs 4 counters on it. Down comes Vigor. Need to remember Pelucranos can be escaped as well. Plus counter on a legendary creature goes onto the black one, followed by Cleopatra. Then Aurum Reef puts a counter on the commander and the Vigor. 3 cards left in hand over there. Then Yahenni sacrifices the Cleopatra Puts it in the command zone, but this is just to draw a card and lose 2 life, I imagine. Gain plenty of life from the Roots of Life. Morska investigating again. A Goose Mother, where X is 10. You create 5 food tokens in this instance, and when it attacks you can sack food to draw a card. Does not have haste. It is a big flyer though, so that is something that we have to be wary of. Can always bounce it back to hand if needs be. Gaining 2 life off the Gala Greeters when the creature enters. Now let's see, I don't imagine they want to bother attacking, but we can make use of the Ghostly Flicker if they do. Alright, they do attack in towards us, and their clue token has exalted, so that will jump up by 1 power. So are we going to be desperate for the extra 3 mana? Should we go sink into Stupor now to get rid of this? I don't know what we're going to draw into, to be honest, that we particularly care about. Yeah, we'll leave it. Be interesting to see if it costs us the game or not. Alright, just a land, ironically, a Reliquary Tower. So in that case, I think it has to be Reliquary Tower, and we look at making a copy of, where is it? The Seagate Lawmaster. If we could put 12 mana into this, we could always go for that as well, for hexproof. I think, we're missing haste, but the Seagate Lawmaster is going to be the one to go for. So I'll tap down a forest, because we're going to sacrifice that as a desert. Be able to make multiple uses of Lazotep Quarry as long as we can keep deserts in play, which we have quite a few of now. Doesn't look as though we're going to be too hopeful for a Maze's End win. Now that is an ally zombie, and we've only got 1 other ally in play. So we could try and dissuade our opponents from swinging in towards us with a Cryptic Gateway, make them worry about that. And while we've got the floating mana, because then we'll have 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, enough for our Ghostly Flicker. This does mean that we're not swinging in with Omo, but we don't have any safe attacks anyway. We could have swung in, ideally, and then flickered in response to get the additional trigger. But we'll flicker our commander. So then Omo re-enters, make the Reliquary Tower and everything land, displace a kitten and everything creature as well. And this way we can cast Ghostly Flicker, we can flicker our, just Timber Protector and the Cryptic Gateway. Displace a kitten will be able to be pointed at Omo, and that way we can get another trigger there as well. Yeah, it's all nice and clunky, which pretty much sums up the entire game for us. But we are continuing to hold back. Oh, we can do lands with this as well, so flickering the Cloud Post that we've never put an everything counter on wouldn't be the worst. Although that does mean that we could untap the Lazotep Quarry with the Ghostly Flicker as well, which I didn't account for. Defiler of Vigour, that's another creature with trample. And this player's only got 6 minutes left on his clock, so he's going to have to be quick. We're not doing too great on the clock either. Tyrant Sanctum puts an indestructible counter back on the Fane Broker, followed by Cleopatra, puts a plus counter on everything with Defiler of Vigour. Pelucranos back into play again. So if they try and fight our stuff, we're going to have to flicker some things out of the way. Probably takes on our Timber Protector. Alright, decides not to swing in at all. He was going to swing in at us and then decided against it. So he's just holding up the fight on this, seemingly. Cleopatra puts a plus counter on the 2 mono black legends. Morska investigates, and may well be that there's a counter spell held up for protecting the goose. But I think it's about time that we lost this game anyway. Would be nice to draw into some cards with the Seagate Lawmaster. We haven't been able to use it yet. Maybe having Akroma's Memorial in the deck instead of something like this would be good as well. And that just helps us with the whole attacking and being evasive and all the rest of it. Clue token is cracked. Another clue is cracked. So 7 cards in hand. Still a decent amount of mana. Loyal Warhound is going to be able to make a land, I dare say. Gaining 2 life from the Gala Greeters. So now with 6 cards in hand and 6 mana available, going through 2 attacks. So I imagine it's time to see if there's any counter magic on our opponent's side of the field. Might even be able to buff the Merchant of Truth. See if the goose wants to sacrifice a food. Before the draws we'll go for the sink into Stupor. And the client's being really laggy, which is annoying when you're so close to the end of the game. There we go, got there in the end. So flicker the Omo in response. Can't make any blocks here anyway. So that comes back into play. Like I've said before, I don't think Maze's End is going to be relevant, but we'll make as many different lands as possible. So Seagate Loremaster can be indestructible, because it might be that we want to flicker Omo again, so we'll put a counter on her at the last second. Seems as though the Sink into Stupor is going to land though, which means we get to survive another turn by some miracle. Sacks of food to draw up to 8, and we take 2 damage in the air to the white creature. A Tail the Suspect. Investigate, and you can play an additional land this turn. Another clue token cracked, so still at 7 cards in hand. And they went this way, search for a basic and investigate. So it's looking as though we're going to be able to untap with allies here. Yeah, do we flicker now? No, let's see what we draw into first. Maybe it's something that's easier to flicker Omo with off the top of our deck. Alright, Lord of the Umbriel is going to give hexproof to all of our stuff. We can also go after the Master of the Pearl Trident if we want to sacrifice lands as well. So we'll go for a bunch of mana if you can stop lagging. Then we will put 2 mana into X on the Lazotep Quarry. Sacrifice an island as a desert. Maybe could have sacrificed the Reliquary Tower. We'll do that again if we decide to untap this. So now we've got Island Walk. Let's go for Ghostly Flicker now, even though we arguably shouldn't do this. The game needs to end anyway. Untap the Cloud Post and the Lazotep Quarry. And then because Omo doesn't have an everything counter on it yet, it means that we can't swing in with it with Island Walk. Like I said, the deck's pulling in a few different directions here. It wants to both attack and flicker at the moment, so might keep Displacer Kitten in. We've got some use out of it, but all the other flicker stuff I think is going to have to leave the deck. So Omo re-enters and put a plus counter on the, or an everything counter on the Lazotep Quarry again now that we've flickered it. Put 1 on Omo. Oh, actually we haven't flickered it yet, have we? So should have targeted something else with that. And we're probably going to time out ourselves here. Let's draw a card now that we've got 3 allies. Oh, and there's a Cyclonic Rift. We've got Fierce Guardianship as well. Not the right thing to do, doing it during the main phase like this, but we're running low on time, like I said, so gonna have to. Forgot that the Cloud Post comes into play tapped, actually. Now it's lagging like crazy. I'm just trying to pay the mana, and then these triggers going on the stack. I think we've auto-yielded to them, but God, it's taking forever. And the longer the game goes, the more this tends to happen. Yeah, so I doubt we're going to see a successful conclusion to this one. I'll just try and pay for it with Yavimaya. It's not even letting me do that. I've lost about a minute to this now, which is excellent. Yeah, absolutely no idea what to do. It's just not paying the cost, and we're going to end up losing 2 minutes to trying to cast a spell. Doesn't matter how quick you click it all, if the client just can't keep up with you, then there's nothing I can do. Alright, and finally it goes on the stack. So, Displacer Kitten, can't do lands with it. Might as well flicker the Omo. And again, click Displacer Kitten, click the Omo, and click done. God, at least that Roots of Life is going to be gone, so we're not seeing a load of triggers onto that. So then Omo enters, Lazotep Quarry again, and we'll just go after the Timber Protector this time, just for the fun of it. Terrax is going to win this one by default anyway, so it's only going to take a few more minutes for him to finally win. That time we got a board wipe though. We'll play the Lord of the Unreal for hexproof on everything that has a counter on it. And if we had more time on the clock, we actually could have aimed for a Maze's End win with the Ubermauled Hydra. Doubt we can get rid of Terrax, even though we've got Island Walk in the next turn or two. It'd be funny if this guy won, because we time out before him, and we can't hold priority during our opponent's turn to protect ourselves with a Fierce Guardianship, which is annoying. So, yeah, not necessarily seeing the correct outcome from this game. I don't know if you can add even more time to the clock. Doesn't very often come up though. Should have put the counter from the Omo onto the Master of the Pearl Trident instead of the Timber Protector, because hexproof on this is going to be much more important. Not that we've got the time to swing in for lethal over here, I don't think, not with the client lagging like that. Alright, just deciding to scoop, so it's through to Terrax's turn. See if we've got enough time to win this. I'm just going to pass through the turn automatically for the sake of saving the clock. If he manages to get a board wipe off on us, then we'll just have to assume that we could have gone for the Fierce Guardianship onto it and then swung in for lethal. Plays haven't been too incredible this game, but we managed to cobble something together in the end. Officious Interrogation. Choose any number of target players, investigate X times, where X is the number of creatures they control. And I do have auto yields on, so I don't know why my clock's going down. There we go, it just jumped back up by like 12 seconds. So they've got 6 clue tokens. Cracking a clue, just searching for a board wipe, I imagine. 47 cards left in the library. Cracking another one. And again, I'm auto-yielded. I don't know why it's asking me about a Tezzeret. Just lost 11 seconds to that. Drew 2 cards to the 0 ability, 13 cards in hand. And I'm clicking yield through this turn and no possible play, and then right-click again and it isn't selecting them for some reason. God, how annoying. I'll just keep doing this over and over again and see if it sticks. Anyway, Jaheira has come down, so not sure if our opponent's got anything here. Alright, looks like it's finally stuck. So 58 seconds. Cracked another clue token. Managed to tap all the clues for mana, by the way, with the Jaheira. Cracked a clue again, so not likely that he's going to be able to do anything here. We're just going wide. And goes through to the discard step, so 15 cards in hand means he has to discard 8. And let's see how long our turn lags for. Straight through to the combat phase with about 35 seconds to go. And I'll swing in with everything. I'll pull back the Omo so that we don't get a trigger there. Go in at Terrax, pull back the Omo. And now it's lagging, yep, 20 seconds left on the clock, so just yielded to the entire turn here. Alright, and by some miracle, thanks to Terrax playing it out, we managed to win that one with 16 seconds left on the clock. So that is about a 3-hour game, which I'm praying that some of you actually bother to watch. A lot of edits to be made to the deck. Like I said, I'm not going to go for the whole flicker thing. I think it'll just be indestructible on Omo to try and keep it in play. I'll make the edits to the deck list just for the fun of it. But if this video doesn't get like 1,500, 2,000 views, then I'm not likely to replay it again. But you can look at the deck list. And if it gets fewer than 1,000 views, then you have absolutely no chance of me playing it again. But keep an eye on the deck list in the description and you'll see some of the edits that I've made. I'll make it more of an attacking base commander, I think, because the whole blink thing's a little bit clunky. Anyway, hopefully you all enjoyed this one. Oh god, I have to edit it now. Huge thank you to Terrax as ever. He's one of the patrons that's pretty much single-handedly holding the channel afloat at this point. And a huge thank you to the other patrons for their financial support as well. I'm tribalkai. Thank you for watching.